there is very rarely a situation where a repair or an upgrade that is done to a house will net a homeowner a dollar for dollar return on that investment. Right. So if you spend thousands of dollars hiring someone to come and paint the property or reinstall new flooring or anything like that, very rarely is that going to equate to a dollar. It's not like hey, I spent 10 grand putting in some new flooring all throughout this house, so I'm going to be able to list my home for 10 grand more than all the other similar properties. That's not how it works. It almost never works out like that, right? You might even net a couple grand more, maybe. It just depends on the situation, depends on the competition that's out there. But I don't ever want you to be of the mindset that, once I pump money into these changes, that I'm going to be able to pull that money back out, especially when it comes to Welcome to the Home Goals Podcast, the ultimate guide for turning your home goals into a reality. I'm your host, Derek Thornton. Join us as we navigate the twists and turns of obtaining a home. We'll be offering expert tips, helping you avoid pitfalls, and championing your journey towards that cherished place to call home. In this week's episode, we are going to be discussing whether or not to DIY or don't. Trying to figure out whether or not that project is something that you can tackle yourself or whether or not you need to call in a pro. And for some of you may be thinking, okay, like I thought this was more so preparing me to purchase a home. And if I don't own a home, why do I need to listen to this episode? It is still crucial for you to listen to this particular episode because it's really important for a buyer to understand what they're getting themselves into when they purchase a home. So we spent a lot of time discussing the process of figuring out how much to save or how to prepare for when you're looking at houses, right? Trying to figure out like, okay, how much is this going to cost me? What are the other fees that may be hidden in there? What are the other taxes that are in the area? All these different factors for determining how you can prepare for what your home is worth on the front end. But we don't spend nearly as much time preparing buyers for what it's going to cost on the opposite end, on the flip side of home ownership, right? Once you actually own that house, what are the costs that are going to be associated with you being able to keep it up, to maintain it, to take care of this valuable asset that you have, right? This is your home. It's the place where that you can lay your head to rest at every night at your shelter, but it's also an asset and it should be viewed as such. Everything that you do in that house, it should be in the back of your mind somewhere. I'm not saying that this should be the leading cause for all the decisions you make with your home, but it should be somewhere in your mind that any changes you make to that house, how is this going to impact the resale value, right? Is this going to make it something that's more difficult for me to sell this house someday? Is it going to be an issue down the road where I'm basically taking away my equity? Because again, that is one of the best benefits to owning a home, is being able to build that equity. If you are tackling projects or making changes to the home that are negatively impacting your ability to sell it down the road, you might reach a point where you look up 5-10 years from now when you're trying to sell and realize that you've basically been renting all this time because you have squandered away all your equity doing all these different projects and things that have just completely taken away all of the value out of your home. And so we don't want you to end up in that position. And the more you can learn about that home and what you're able and willing to tackle yourself with those different projects and things that are going on, the better off you'll be down the road. And I don't also want you to think to yourself, oh, well, you know what? I like this home. It's perfect the way it is. I'm not going to want to make any changes. I guarantee you that will change. Even if it's a new construction home, I don't know of a single homeowner out there that has not thought to themselves like, oh, man, I wish I could change this. Or, oh, I want to add a little flair or a little touch of my own interest in here, right? I might want to paint this room or add some floating shelves in there, add some more storage in the garage. There's always something. People are always thinking of things that they could do to their home. I have a note in my phone right now that has a full list of all these different projects that I want to tackle with the house, right? Like, oh, I want to redo the trim work on that. I want to repaint this. I want to change that out. I want to get that door changed out. There's always going to be a list running through your mind. And so Again, you want to be able to determine or see as best you can before you ever even set foot into that home or before you own that property. You want to be able to have a clear idea of what all you would be willing to take on as far as DIY projects are concerned. And so I'm going to talk through just kind of figuring out like when there's a project, something that you can work on yourself, and when it's something where you need to call in a pro, and then also the value that goes into those different projects and whether or not you have the appropriate expectations. Now, you're always trying to figure out whether or not you can save on that labor. That's a question that's always going through our minds, but we also don't want to be in a situation where we have caused more damage than what we needed to do. The first look at the safety and risk aspect of it all as well. For me personally, I have a firm line in the sand that I do not mess with electrical, even if it's something that I feel like I could definitely probably do, or maybe I might be able to. It's not something serious. If it's anything more complicated than just changing out a light bulb or something like that, I'm calling an electrician. I'm not even playing with that stuff. I don't want to cause more damage than what I've done. I don't want to do that, anything like that or whatever. It's always like hey, if the reset and the breaker isn't going to fix this thing, I need to call in the pros, right? It's not something I'm going to address. That's the hard line in the sand that I've drawn because I don't have experience working with those electrical panels. I don't have experience with that stuff, so I'm not even going to try to go into that world, and I know that it can cause a ton of damage if it's done incorrectly. Just the other day, I went into my house and I went to turn on the switch in the bathroom. None of the lights turned on. I knew all the bulbs were new, so I knew it wasn't the bulbs. I knew it was a clear electrical issue, and so I was like, well, crap, now I got to call an electrician or something like that. You're always going to have to pay a couple $100 just to get someone out there to kind of give a quote on it or give an idea of what it's going to take to get that item fixed. But it's one of the things that I might just have to suck up. Now, fortunately, it started working again, but I also know in the back of my mind, it's a very real possibility that it may go out again at some point, and now I got to call in somebody else for that, right? There's always going to be some other job or something, but you have to set that line in the sand of like what you are able and willing to do. Now, even if you do feel confident in yourself, you also have to ask, is this something that could hinder me down the road when I'm trying to sell this property? Right? There's a lot of stuff in there, especially when it comes to permitting. A lot of people don't even realize this, but even in our area, you technically need a permit just to put in a ceiling fan because you're messing with electrical work, right? They don't want homeowners doing a lot of that stuff. Now, is that something that most people will do? Absolutely not. The average person is not going to pull a permit just to go put in a ceiling fan on their property or anything. But it just goes to show that there is a lot of checks and balances that are put in place. And so I don't want you to think that you can just go crazy and watch a bunch of YouTube videos and voila, you'll be able to become this master electrician that can just do all of these different projects in your home. You need to make sure you have the appropriate things taken care of by a licensed professional, someone who works in that field. You want to have them be able to walk you through it. And so, again, you need to take that into consideration first and foremost. There's been a lot of times where I've gone to show houses and we look at a property and it was clear through the inspection that the seller or someone who wasn't a professional did a lot of the electrical work, and that is a huge issue that is going to be a material fact that can almost essentially keep you from being able to sell that home, right? Because even though all the houses are technically sold as is in the area, if there is a problem like that found, like with the electrical, if there's a serious issue that's found wrong in that home, the seller doesn't have to fix it. However, if they have to put that home, if the buyer decides, I'm not dealing with that and I'm going to back out of this deal, if they have to put that home back on the market, there's no buyer that is going to take a shot on it knowing that there's electrical issues wrong with that property that have not been addressed, right? And so for the seller, it's like, hey, I might as well address it with this person. And if you have gone in there and caused a bunch of issues and crossed a bunch of wires and all this other stuff, it can be infinitely more expensive for you to address after the fact, right? And so again, you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you are going to be having to pay even more than if you had just called an electrician out or called that licensed professional out in the first place. And so when you're going out and looking at houses, and when you're going under contract on a home and you start to get that inspection report back and you see some issues on there as well, you want to be asking yourself, okay, what are some things on here that I can address myself, and what are the things that I would need to call in a professional, and let that guide and dictate the things that you request when you're working with the seller to try and negotiate repairs, right? I always want to focus on the things. What are the things that I don't want as a buyer, I don't want to be able to address, or I'm not qualified to address, but could be huge issues down the road, right? Those are the things that want to be top on my list. So always look to that. And then ask yourself, be realistic. That's the best thing that you can do. Do you have the tools, time, and the patience to be able to handle this stuff? There's sometimes where like my stubbornness has cost me more time and money just because I thought that I can do this myself. I don't need to hire someone else. I'll go through and work through it. And then you very quickly realize, like, I don't have this tool. I don't have this tool. I got to make another trip down to Lowe's to go get this. And then you got to get this. And then before you know it, you've bought all these different items. It's taken you your entire weekend, and you still haven't gotten it to look as nice as someone else could have come and done it just like that, right? And so be realistic with yourself. You know your strengths, you know your weaknesses. Ask yourself, do I really have the tools, time, and the patience to be able to handle this? I needed to have my lawn irrigated for planting some grass seed, and I was looking into, I was like, hey, let me see what it would cost for me to do this myself, right? What would it cost for me to just go and rent the machine? Because you can rent the machine to aerate the soil and stuff like that, and puncture the ground and get the holes in there so the seeds can go in. You can rent those machines and do it yourself. And so I was looking into that. I looked up to see what it would cost to do that. I figured out, like, okay, I watched a couple of videos to figure out how to actually work the machine, the things that you need to keep in mind, what to do, what not to do, all that stuff. Like, I looked it all up, and I felt somewhat familiar with it. But then I was like, let me just see what it would cost to have someone else come in and aerate our lawn this way. And so I went on Facebook Marketplace, and I found somebody who would do it for $80. And I was like, that's basically what I would have spent just renting the machine. And that's not even taking into consideration me actually operating the machine and trying to work it for the first time, likely taking significantly longer to do it than someone else, right? So in that case, I was like, it's easier for me to just pay someone else. I don't have to do everything else myself, right? And so again, ask yourself realistically, this project that you're about to tackle, do you have the tools to do it? One, do you have the time, and do you have the patience? Right, that time and patience, those are the ones that are the most difficult to predict, but they are often the most important in that equation. Right, are you going to drive yourself up the wall trying to figure out how to handle this new piece of equipment, or how to work this new job, and before you know it, you're like, man, like I've technically saved some money on this deal, but I have wasted countless hours of my valuable time to this project that I could have had someone else come in and get done, right? And so again, you need to always be looking at it. One piece of advice that I heard, and this was more on the real estate side of things, but people said you should always, and it's more difficult for us as independent contractors and entrepreneurs to be able to keep this in mind, but they said you need to always be looking at your time through like a cost per hour and asking yourself, okay, how much is my time actually worth? If I took the time that I spent on whatever I'm about to do, if that equated to a certain dollar amount of money, how much would that be? And is it still worth it in that case? And that's the way that you have to look at your time as well, right? You can look at your weekend and say, like, hey, I spent the entire weekend painting this house inside and out. And then you might look back and say, like, hey, was that really worth my time? That's a difficult question to answer if you can't actually put a dollar amount on your time. So you need to figure out what your time is worth, and then ask yourself, am I willing to put that cost into it, or is it better for me to just hire someone else? Poorly done work can hurt your resale value. I cannot stress this enough. As someone who has walked into hundreds and hundreds of homes over the years, I have seen countless situations where you can see shoddy workmanship that's been done, and we can tell. It's not like, oh man, I wonder what happened here. You can always tell when you go into a house, this person was DIY crazy. And that, for me as an agent, is something that I'm always warning my buyers against. I let them know, hey, you might want to be careful with this house. I'm noticing a lot of projects that seem to be done by an amateur or done by either the homeowner or someone else who didn't know what they were doing. And if these are just the projects that we can see clearly, who's to say there aren't a million other things in this house that they have messed with that we can't even see, right? That we don't even know about. Who's to say they haven't messed with the electrical or messed with the crawl space or the foundation, the structure, or messed with some other plumbing item or something else that is serious that we can't visibly see right now, but is still just as important of an issue, right? So like I said, you are very much hurting yourself in a situation where you're like, hey, I'm saving money on the front end by doing this work myself instead of hiring someone, but on the back end, when I'm trying to sell this property, I'm losing those funds as well, right? And so whenever I'm walking a buyer through a home for the first time, we're always looking to see, hey, like, is there paint on the ceiling from them like trying to paint along the edges but not doing it the way that a professional would do it, right? Is there items that they have built, or maybe like there's a deck in the backyard that was built and you can clearly see the nails, all the bolts are out of place. It just looks wonky the way that it was built. And you can clearly tell it wasn't done by a professional, right? Like these are all things that we're looking at to get context clues and understand like, hey, this is something that you may not want to pursue because it looks like it could become an eventual money pit for you. Once you get into the weeds with buying this home, going under contract with it, there could be a lot of other issues. And so as a homeowner, you need to be able to keep that in mind. It's not enough for you to just do that project and ask your spouse or ask your close friends like, hey, what do you think of this? Whatever. A lot of times they want to spare your feelings and they're like, hey, it ain't my house, and so let them have at it. It looks terrible, but hey, I love that for you. If you like it, I like it, right? So you don't want to do that. You want to have an unbiased opinion who can take a look at that and see, hey, is this actually done in a professional, workmanlike manner that is not going to deter buyers down the road? Even if you have no interest in selling, even if you are like, this is my forever home, I'm never leaving, I'm going to die in this home, still make sure you do those appropriate things. Because let's say, for example, you do end up passing away and your children or your family members inherit that house. They're then going to have to deal with all those issues that you did with that house, right? All the work that you've done. I've done estate sales in the past where people have been in the predicament where they're having to undo all of the unprofessional work that the homeowner did before they passed away, and it's costing them a ton of time and money and energy just to be able to make that house marketable, right? And so you need to always have that on your mind. You need to figure out, okay, what are the red flags that I would need to hire someone versus doing this myself. One of the biggest red flags is if it's work that actually requires a permit, right? So if it's over a certain dollar threshold, or if it's, again, working with major systems in the house, the electrical, the plumbing, if you need a license to be able to address that particular issue, that's usually a red flag that like, hey, this might be something that I want to hire a pro to actually work on. Water lines, right? Like all these things that can become massive issues. One tip that I heard that's kind of funny, but it was actually really true, is that like, hey, if you have to watch more than 3 YouTube videos for it to even begin to make sense to you, that's a sign that you probably need to hire a pro, right? So like that, there's some times where you know yourself, and again, you know your limitations, so you can tell very quickly. Even with like my car sometimes, right? There have been times where I have looked up YouTube videos, and within the first 2 minutes, I can tell, okay, this is way too much, right? This is way above my skill level. This is way above my, like, I don't even know what he's talking about. Or he's pulled out at least 3 or 4 tools in this video that I have never even seen before and I don't own. Again, might be better for you to just go ahead and call the pro instead of you trying to get this whole new set of tools and issues and try to fix it yourself, whatever. And so, again, those are all red flags that you might need to look at to let you know, hey, these are projects that I would not want to be able to tackle myself. And it's no different when you're going through the process of buying a home, when you're looking at that inspection report, when you're touring a property for the first time and deciding whether or not this is a house that you would actually want to pursue. Those are all things that you want to look at. Or if it could be something where it's like maybe we could do a hybrid project, right? Where let's say the flooring needs to be replaced, and you know that half the job for the contractor would be tearing out the old flooring and removing it. You could say, hey, I'll tear out the flooring, remove that myself. That way the new person can come in and just install the new flooring and be ready to go. It cuts down on your cost, and it still makes the work done in a professional, workmanlike manner, right? See if there's ways that you can get around or kind of lessen the cost of whatever project you're getting ready to take on. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is just understanding the value. There is very rarely a situation where a repair or an upgrade that is done to a house will net a homeowner a dollar for dollar return on that investment. Right. So if you spend thousands of dollars hiring someone to come and paint the property or reinstall new flooring or anything like that, very rarely is that going to equate to a dollar. It's not like hey, I spent 10 grand putting in some new flooring all throughout this house, so I'm going to be able to list my home for 10 grand more than all the other similar properties. That's not how it works. It almost never works out like that, right? You might even net a couple grand more, maybe. It just depends on the situation, depends on the competition that's out there. But I don't ever want you to be of the mindset that, once I pump money into these changes, that I'm going to be able to pull that money back out, especially when it comes to the repairs that aren't always as cosmetic, right? And so the major systems in the home, the roof, the crawl space, the electrical work, the plumbing, those are things that are crucial to a home's or your ability to be able to sell that home, but they don't necessarily equate to a dollar value. Right. So it's not like you can assign a valuation to that particular repair or upgrade. Right. So like there have been some situations where I'll tell you about one of my clients who purchased a home that I was really glad that they purchased because I felt like this gave them a much better opportunity than some of the other products, right? So they were looking at one house that had all the cosmetic updates, right? It had the upgraded kitchen, the upgraded light fixtures, the upgraded bathrooms. It just looked really nice all throughout, right? Like it looked like it was something out of Pier 1 Imports. Looked beautiful. Like it was definitely something that you could show off to your friends and be very proud of. And like, look at this gorgeous home that I just purchased, right? It fit all the bill on that. However, the major system, the water heater, the HVAC system, the roof, all of those things were nearing the end of their life, right? And so it looked pretty, but you knew there were a lot of important repairs that were coming due. And I'm going to tell you right now, those are also systems that when you replace them, even though they cost thousands upon thousands of dollars to replace, they're not going to always equate to that same valuation when you go to sell. Right. So if you have let's say all the electrical in the house or something like that, or you have some major electrical work that needs to be done throughout that home, and they say, hey, it's going to cost you 12 grand to do all this electrical work. If you go and turn around to sell your house, you're not going to be able to sell it for 12 grand more automatically than all the similar homes, because most buyers who are moving forward with the assumption that all the other homes out there have the electrical work and everything else addressed. And so the only way that it would net you more is if you were competing only with other houses that had electrical issues. The majority of houses that you're competing with or would be competing with down the road are not going to have that issue. And that's why it's more difficult for you to put a dollar value on that as far as resale value goes, right? And so the same thing goes with my clients. When they were looking at that house that had all the cosmetic updates, it's like, hey, this is great, but we're going to have to address these items in the very near future. We're going to have to get this new roof. We're going to have to get this new HVAC system, and that is not going to equate to value on our end, right? So it's something that we need, but it's not going to help us on the back end. On the flip side, though, the house that they did end up purchasing is kind of my ideal scenario for a buyer client, right? I usually don't recommend that buyer clients buy fixer-uppers or anything like that, especially if it's their first home, because it's just far too much that goes into it. However, I do like situations where there was another home in the same area that they wanted, the same size home that they wanted. However, that particular home was very dated, right? It had the wallpaper, it had the carpet just everywhere, even in the bathrooms. I don't know why that was ever a thing, but it had all these just dated features in the home. However, it was kept very clean. They had all the major systems worked on, had invoices, receipts for all of it. New roof, new HVAC, crawl space, had a dehumidifier and vapor barrier, like all these things that the agency is excited about, but the average buyer usually doesn't care about. It had it all, right? It had all that stuff taken care of. It just didn't have the cosmetic stuff. And I told them, I said, this is a great opportunity, right? Because the average buyer is looking for the pretty house that has all the updates but may not have the major systems taken care of. And so you might be able to get this one for a cheaper price point, but you can do a lot of that work yourself or at a discounted rate, right? Where you're like, hey, let me remove the flooring and just pay someone to install the new stuff. Or, hey, I can take down that wallpaper and paint it whatever color I want to, right? You can handle a lot of that stuff. But the important thing is that the major stuff that can be very costly but not always equate to value, those things were already taken care of, right? So that's what you're trying to look for when you're searching for different properties that are out there and understanding what's on. So hope that gave you a little bit more insight into it. Again, it's always a toss of the dice of what's more important to you, and never hurts to ask your realtor as well. Hey, I'm thinking about doing these projects. What are your thoughts on valuation and what's most important to me now? So hope that's helpful for you all. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Enjoy your Labor Day weekend, and I'll talk to you next week. Have a good one.